Hi, I'm Joey, and for a long time, if you asked me whether or not I was religious, I would have told you I was agnostic, meaning, right? Now, if you asked me that question, I would say I'm Catholic. Um, Coincidentally, if you asked me that when I was 4 years old, I would have also said I was Catholic. When I was 14, if you asked me that, I probably would have said, go away. I don't know, I thought that was funny. Maybe it's not. Um, let's see here. So, I want to talk about why I think agnosticism is lazy. It's a lazy worldview, in my opinion. And I want to preface this conversation by saying this is not about talking trash about anybody. Like I said, I was agnostic for many years, and all of my criticism, every single piece of it, comes from my own experience of myself, right? I'm criticizing my former self more than anybody. Um, I don't believe that I'm better than anybody or that I know better than anybody. I'm just sharing my true, real opinion that agnosticism is a lazy worldview. That is my opinion. I can't sugarcoat it any more than that. But I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. Also, I am not an expert in philosophy or religion. I have not read the whole Bible. I have not read any kind of epistemological papers. I don't know much about anything. So if I make a scientific error or a theological error, may the Lord forgive me, of course, and I hope that you will forgive me as well. And if you know better than me, then please leave a comment and educate me. Let's get back to my notes here. I'm not so good off the cuff. The first little almost tangent, immediately we're going to go off on a tangent, that I want to cover here is that my opinion is that agnosticism is the same thing as atheism. Now, I understand that if you look those words up in a dictionary, they have different definitions. I'm not ignorant of that. I know what agnosticism means, and I know what atheism means. Don't think I don't. I do know what those mean. What I'm saying is that I believe that, roughly speaking, the people now who say they're agnostic are the same people who 10 years ago would have said they were atheist, but the word atheist just kind of got too much negative press. It kind of got too much associated with like the Neil deGrasse Tyson, Rick and Morty, Redditor sort of persona, and I think that just turned people off of it, and so agnostic became the cool new way to say what, in my opinion, amounts to basically the same worldview. I think if you asked people 6 or 7 or 8 years ago who said they were atheists, like what their worldview was, I don't think most of them would have said, I'm certain there is no God. I'm positive. I'm convinced. They would have probably said something like, well, I just have not been convinced that there is one. And to me, it's so this doesn't even matter that much, but I wanted to get this off my chest first. I think that the only reason people call themselves agnostic now as opposed to atheist is because the word atheist has too much negative press, and I think it's just sort of cooler at this point to say agnostic, but I think it's roughly the same worldview. In practice, I understand that there's a different definition. Okay, a second thing I want to get sort of out into the open for the record is that I'm not any kind of expert. I have not read epistemology books. I have not read the whole Bible. I'm not a scholar on anything. I'm just I'm just sitting here talking about, well, this is how I feel. If you are an expert on epistemology and you've got like crazy references to, I haven't read Descartes. I haven't read that. So if you have, please leave a comment and we can engage in a dialogue, and I'm sure I can learn a lot from you if you have read those things. I have not. Just off the top, I want to say I really don't know what I'm talking about. This is just my personal experience and some of my thoughts and feelings. And so I'm sorry also if this video is a little bit disorganized or chaotic because, well, it's a crazy world out there. Okay. So the first question I want to ask, this is my first highlighted thing is intro, and then after that my second highlighted bullet point is a question, and the question is, what does it mean to believe in God? I think this question fundamentally is at the heart of this video, and I think it kind of sets up everything I want to say. So I would like to posit that there is a misconception, and I'm here reaching for my cup of coffee, just to kind of get me amped up here to talk about this. I believe there's a misconception among not only the secular people, but also I think among many of the Christian and Catholic people, I think there's a misconception about what it means to believe in God. So, and the way I'm going to get at this is by creating a straw man. I'm going to create a straw man. I think it's a useful straw man of an agnostic person. So the agnostic person says, hey man, I just don't really know what's going on, right? And my answer to that, as now a Catholic man, is I don't know either. I also don't know. And I'm realizing now my hair is in my face. Maybe that would be helpful to. I also don't know. Believe it or not, in the draconian Catholic Church, I'm not calling it that. People have called it that. The draconian, awful, fascist Catholic Church, you actually are allowed to say, I don't know. I'm not necessarily convinced all the time that God's real, or that he is the way I think he is, or that I'm worshiping him the right way. I was actually going to mention this later, but it kind of feels natural to say it here. I recently overheard a conversation where there was a Muslim fella talking about how Christianity is idolatry, and saying, you know, his thing was, he was saying, well, God can't be a human. That's sacrilegious to say that, and Christians are going to go to hell if they don't repent that. And I remember hearing him say that and just being afraid. Yeah, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid that he's right. As a person who, now I'm Catholic. I'm Christian. I've been Christian now for a while. Grew up Catholic. I'm afraid that I'm wrong. And I just want to say that because I think there's this idea, and I believe it's a misconception, that believing in God means being convinced that God is real, or that being Catholic means being convinced that the Catholic Church is right about everything it says. And that's not what it means at all. It really isn't about that. Even saints, there's all kinds of stories of saints, Catholic saints, who have had doubts, like real serious struggles with, like, I don't know. And that's, I've had that experience. Not to compare myself and say I'm a saint. I'm certainly no saint. But yeah, it's not about being convinced. Being convinced in something is a feeling. To some extent, knowing something is a feeling. And you cannot control your feelings. You cannot control whether or not you are convinced that there is a God, or whether or not you are convinced that that God has three persons and one of them was made manifest on the earth as a man and died for your sins. You know, whether or not you believe that is. Let me see. This is careful because we're actually using an equivocal. There's like an equivocation happening where we're using the word belief to mean different things. Whether or not you are convinced that all that stuff is true is actually irrelevant to whether or not you are a Christian, which sounds crazy to people, but it's the truth. Believing in God, and so now I've set this whole thing up. Well, it doesn't mean this, so what does it mean? Believing in God means acting like God is real and saying that he is. That's kind of what I've come to in my life through a long time of thinking about this question, and many nights poring over the pages of Infinite Jest, which I will probably mention in just about every video I ever record for this channel. Yeah. Excuse my slurping of this coffee. I need to make sure I've got my... But yeah, so this is a little disorganized, but my point here is that believing in God is something you do. It's something you choose to do. And that's at the very core of Christianity and Catholicism. It's at the very core of it. That following God is a choice you make. So it has nothing to do with how you feel. If you feel like God's definitely not real, if that's a feeling that you have, you can still be Christian or Catholic. You can still be religious. It doesn't actually... There's nothing that stopping you. I need to get back to my notes here. I'm going all kinds of off topic here. Yeah. And finally, to sum this section up, speaking now to those members of the audience who may already believe in God, if you already believe in God as in like one all-powerful God. So speaking now to those people, we all believe that he's real and that he is a certain way or whatever. Given that, it seems almost self-evident to me that knowing isn't the point. Because if knowing was the point, the way I see it, if you were supposed to know empirically or like be emotionally convinced, he would come dancing out of the sky on a sheep, a flaming sheep, and write letters in the sky and be like, look at, this is the thing. He doesn't do that. So to me, that's kind of in and of itself. And again, I'm not a theologian, so if I'm being heretical or sacrilegious, then Lord forgive me. But to me, it's almost self-evident that that's not the point, that there's something more subtle going on. And yeah, so now, let's see. My next bullet point is knowledge. The first kind of question of this section, is, my notebook is absolutely falling apart. It is this: how do we know, well, actually, do we know anything? Do we know anything at all? And ever since I was maybe 12 years old, my opinion has been that no, we really don't know anything at all. And I got that opinion from watching Vsauce videos, where he talked about things like the Boltzmann brain. I'm not going to go into detail, but, last Thursdayism, stuff like that. Basically, this idea that, everything you perceive is in your mind to some extent. And so, to me, you really don't know anything other than perhaps that you exist and that you have experiences, which is sort of, this is Descartes' I think, therefore I am, right? Like, that's roughly where I think I stand, is that, and who am I? Where do I stand? I'm just telling you, you clicked on the video. That's why I'm telling you where I stand. I'm not like saying I'm Mr. Everyone knows everything. But, yeah, I think that it's important for me to be honest and say that I really don't believe that we know anything. My argument is that agnosticism is a lazy worldview because we are always constructing belief systems about the world. That's how we live. We can't do it any other way. In order to exist in the world practically, you have to construct belief systems. My argument would be that we don't really know anything other than maybe a few basic facts of consciousness, and that after that it's all inferences, which to some extent is something that's created by our minds, and so how much can we trust it? And so we have belief systems about the world, various belief systems. I'm struggling to come up with like good examples right now, but my argument would be then that the reason I'm saying it's lazy is that you're looking at the most important question of life, the very most important question, which is what is the ultimate nature of reality and of morality. And right at the finish line, after you've already constructed all these beliefs about your life, day-to-day life, you're stopping and saying, I don't feel like it. I don't know. And I respect, I understand that, and I relate to that, and I have been there, but my argument is that it's lazy. And part of the reason for that is that I think you're abdicating your moral responsibility as a human being. I think that as a human being, it's your responsibility to behave as morally as you can, and I would argue that you cannot do that if you haven't put any serious thought into what that means. What does it mean to be moral? What is morality? How is it defined? Where does it come from? If you haven't thought about that, or if you are agnostic about it, to me, you cannot be moral because you don't even know what that means. And we'll talk more about this morality stuff later. And finally, I guess just I would want to say that you aren't agnostic about anything else. This is kind of my point about the belief systems we have, practically speaking. I don't. Let me use myself as an example. I think this is the best thing to do. I am not a scientist. I am not a scholar. I am not particularly learned or educated. So generally, I let the scientists do their thing. They say that there's, I don't know, such a thing as DNA. I don't know that. I've never seen DNA. You could say, well, there's genetic heritability, and it's like, I don't know that. I haven't looked at the data. Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, do I think that people look kind of like their parents? I guess so. Well, what am I, a geneticist? I don't know. I take it on their word because they've thought about it more than I have. That's a belief. So I believe that protons exist. I've never seen a proton. I've never seen an electron. I've never experienced the weak nuclear force. And I've never looked at the data. I've never done any kind of experiments. Epistemically, I have no idea whether or not that's true, that that's really how the world works. But I believe that it is true because that's what I was taught. And maybe that's a lousy reason, but it is the reason. I believe it because that's what I was taught. I was taught that there's atoms and molecules and protons. So my argument would be you really don't know that protons exist. You believe they exist. And that... So why aren't you agnostic about anything other than the most important question, the very most important question, which is, what is the ultimate nature of reality and morality and what's going on here? So hopefully that didn't come across as very mean-spirited, because it wasn't supposed to be. And hopefully it also didn't come across as totally nonsensical, which it also wasn't supposed to be. But perhaps it may have been both of those things. That's sort of up for you to decide. So I've now spoken about agnosticism and hopefully made my argument as to why my title of the video is justified and why my opinion is that it's a lazy worldview. Now, it feels appropriate to talk about, well, what is my worldview now if it's not agnosticism, and why is it what it is, and where did it come from, and all these kinds of things. It feels appropriate to talk about that now. So I'm Catholic now, and I was when I was a kid. And the real reason that I am Catholic is because upon careful contemplation, that's where my conscience was pointing me. That's where my moral compass was pointing me, to the Catholic Church. Your moral compass may be pointing you somewhere else. And I can't tell you... It would actually, I think, be wrong for me to tell you to disobey your moral compass. I mean, even the Catholic Church, and I looked this up to make sure I wasn't wrong, the Catholic Church has a policy called primacy primacy, I guess, of consciousness. Not consciousness, primacy of conscience. Always get those words confused. Primacy of conscience. It means that even the Catholic Church, even the draconian, perhaps, you may think it draconian, Catholic Church tells its people, hey, listen, if you've studied the literature, if you've read the Bible and read the appropriate sections of the catechism or whatever, and if your conscience is sincerely, upon careful reflection, pointing you in a different direction than what our dogma tells you to do, then you should do what your conscience tells you to do. And I think that's a really powerful thing to bring up and point out, is that you have to follow your moral compass. I can't tell you to be Catholic if your moral compass is pointing you to be Muslim. What I am saying is that I do not believe your moral compass is pointing you nowhere. I don't believe that. I think if you think that's the case, that you haven't thought about it enough. That's my opinion about your inner state of affairs, which I obviously can't know anything about, so I'm speaking out of turn, I guess, but it's how I feel. And I just want to say, so I've said that my moral compass was pointing me to Catholicism. Now I'm going to kind of make my case as to why you may want to consider being Christian or Catholic, because it does feel appropriate to the topic of this video. I should offer my solution, like my alternative to what I'm calling a lazy worldview. So I should clearly be like, well, this is whatever. And I want to say, I know it's scary. I know that Christianity is scary. I'm scared too. I know that it's confusing. I am also confused. Just to highlight what I said before, which is that being Christian or being Catholic, it has nothing to do, frankly, with how you feel. It's about what you choose to do. It's about choosing to go to church, even though maybe you don't want to, and choosing to say God is real and it's three persons in one God and it's the Holy Spirit and the incarnation. It's choosing to say that even if you really don't know what it means. This is why you have to read Infinite Jest, because it explains why that's a good idea. My note on that is, I do think it's hubristic to assume that whatever it is that is God's ultimate nature, that it would be comprehensible to you or make any sense to you, I do think that's hubristic. We're talking about God. It actually doesn't make any sense to me to say, well, whatever God is, he's totally going to be understandable to me. It's like, well, I don't know that that's true. I mean, I have trouble understanding things way less complicated than the ultimate all-powerful creator of the reality. Like, I don't understand how to file your tax. I've never filed taxes in my life. Let's see. Yeah, my experience has been that most people spend zero time or energy thinking about whether or not they live a moral life. And I'm not high roading here. I'm not a saint. I'm not even particularly virtuous, but I do think about a lot about whether or not I'm living a moral life. That's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. I probably spend too much time thinking about it, is what my psychologist would say. But you should probably spend more time thinking about it than zero. To me, it seems like is sort of obviously true. Yeah, I think I've actually said my piece here. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I will now play you out, of course, as is the half tradition on this program. I will play you out with a beautiful composition. Oh, and I just want to say also, while I'm getting this set up here, that I like the quote a lot from late comedian Norm Macdonald on the Larry King program. He says, there's nothing in my Christianity that says I'm better than anyone else. It says the exact opposite, that I'm just like everyone else. So I hope that this video has not felt mean-spirited or judgmental. It was not intended to be that, because I'm certainly the last person that should be judging anybody for any reason. Okay, now let's have a tune, and I just want to say also, go Spurs. I've got a friend in Captain Jack. Every time I get me $1, tells me put it on black. But I'm slowly learning to be myself. Wish I could talk to a younger version, give him some help. And where did the time go? I'm still awake in the dark. Falling stars are words in my heart, sing me to sleep. go.